What do you get when you mix guns, politics, and viral videos? Lauren Boebert's rise to fame.
Hey, I'm Garrett, feeling pretty curious today.
And I'm Leah, excited to dive into today's topic. Welcome to Laid Back Learning with Leah and Garrett.
All right, let's set the stage for this one. Political career, businesses, and controversies. I once visited Rifle, Colorado, and saw Shooter's Grill. The open carry vibe was intense. Servers with holstered pistols while bringing you a burger is definitely a scene. Not gonna lie, it felt like a mix of Old West aesthetic and modern political statement, which, kind of sums up a lot of what we're about to talk through.
Let's open the book on this. Lauren Boebert is an American politician who first won a U.S. House seat in 2020, representing Colorado's 3rd Congressional District. She served from 2021 to 2025, representing the 3rd, then won Colorado's 4th District in 2024, and began that term in 2025. She built a national brand around gun rights, and her restaurant in Rifle, called Shooter's Grill, made headlines because the staff openly carried firearms. Think of her as a political firebrand. In style and media presence, she's a right-leaning counterpart to Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Different ideologies, but both skilled at grabbing attention and shaping narratives.
She's in Republican circles that signal hardline positions. For example, the Freedom Caucus, which is a bloc of very conservative House Republicans who often challenge party leadership. She became their communications chair in early 2022. She's also linked to the Republican Study Committee, the Second Amendment Caucus, the Western Caucus, and even the Blockchain Caucus. On policy, guns are central to her brand. She opposed red flag laws. Those allow a court to temporarily remove firearms if there's evidence someone is a danger. She posted a viral video showing herself holstering a handgun in Washington, D.C., promised to carry on Capitol Hill, and co-sponsored a symbolic bill to name an AR-15-style rifle the national gun. On the 2020 election, she supported Donald Trump's claims of fraud and objected to certifying Arizona and Pennsylvania's electoral votes. She used stirring rhetoric around January 6th, calling it Republicans' 1776 moment.
Religion also threads through her public life. She says she became a born-again Christian in 2009. She has argued for more church influence in government and has pushed back on the traditional reading of strict separation of church and state. That belief maps to positions she takes on abortion, sex education, and LGBTQ+ policies. She once blocked critics on her personal Twitter account, a resulting lawsuit from a constituent alleging unconstitutional viewpoint discrimination was dismissed with prejudice in October 2022. Another theme is her embrace of norm-challenging moments, like resisting new metal detectors at the Capitol after January 6, or skipping some House votes while attending a conservative conference using proxy voting. Whether people see those as principled stands or as theatrics really depends on their lens. Okay, here we go, from the top on her backstory. She was born in Florida in 1986 to a young mother, and her family moved between Florida and Colorado before settling in Rifle in 2003. She left high school during her senior year when she had a baby and later earned a GED in 2020, just a month before her first primary win, an unusual timing that became part of her bootstrap narrative. She married Jason Boebert, worked around natural gas and pipeline jobs, and cites that as shaping her energy policy views. There was long-running tabloid speculation that wrestler Stan Lane was her father. DNA testing in 1990 and again in 2023 said no, and the tests resolved that rumor.
Her business years are a big part of the story, and they also gave her a public platform. She and her husband opened Shooter's Grill in 2013 in downtown Rifle and encouraged servers to carry guns openly. She told a story that a man was beaten to death near the restaurant, and that influenced her to carry, but records say the man died of a meth overdose about a block away after a fight elsewhere. Fact-checkers flagged that discrepancy. She expanded with a golf course spot called Putters in 2015, sold it in 2016, and also ran a barbecue spot called Smokehouse 776. In 2017, About 80 people got food poisoning from a temporary shooter's grill or Smokehouse 1776 fare booth that lacked permits. Officials blamed unsafe food handling. The restaurants struggled financially, with disclosures showing losses of about $143,000 in 2019 and $226,000 in 2020. During COVID restrictions in 2020, she reopened for dine-in against orders, received a cease and desist order, moved tables outdoors, had her license briefly suspended, then resumed as local orders lifted. Shooter's Grill eventually closed in 2022 when the landlord didn't renew the lease.
Her political rise clicked fast. In 2019, she led a "We Will Not Comply" rally against Colorado's red flag law. Security there was provided by a militia-style group called the American Patriots 3%, and Proud Boys were present. She later deleted some militia-friendly social posts after reporters asked questions. That same year, she confronted Beto O'Rourke, a Democratic presidential candidate, over assault-style rifle bans at a town hall in Aurora. Later in 2019, she launched a primary challenge against Scott Tipton, a 5-term Republican congressman. That was a true shocker. She beat him in the 2020 GOP primary around 55% to 45%, even though Donald Trump had endorsed Tipton. Trump congratulated Boebert afterward. She then won the general election against Democrat Dianne Mitch Bush. Early in Congress, she introduced many bills and resolutions focused on guns, immigration, and checking the executive branch, though none moved out of committee at that stage.
Her controversies in Congress added up and helped shape public perception. On the 2020 election, she echoed Trump's false fraud claims and voted to object to Arizona and Pennsylvania electors. On January 6, she tweeted real-time updates like the House lockdown and Speaker Nancy Pelosi's evacuation. Some said that raised security concerns, even if TV was showing parts of it. She co-signed a letter to keep members' historical ability to store firearms in offices. There was a proxy voting dust-up when she cited COVID to skip votes, but attended CPAC, a conservative conference. She voted against 2 bills intended to address the baby formula shortage. On COVID, she posted a snarky message about the Delta variant that she later deleted and mocked vaccination efforts using charged language. On money and ethics, there was a large 2020 mileage reimbursement she later partly reclassified. A short-lived 2021 FEC inquiry over a few $1,000s of Venmo'd personal expenses that she repaid as an error. And on the same day, a late disclosure of her husband's significant income linked to energy work through Boebert Consulting, which raised conflict of interest questions while she served on the Natural Resources Committee. In 2022, reporting flagged Stock Act filing issues, which is the law requiring timely disclosure of certain financial trades by members of Congress to prevent insider trading.
Then came the political whiplash. She won her 2022 GOP primary against Don Coram, a moderate state senator, but barely squeaked by in the general, defeating Democrat Adam Frisch by 546 votes out of roughly 327,000. After that, she missed the 2023 debt ceiling vote she had said she would oppose, later calling it a no-show protest, even as video showed her hurrying up the steps after the vote closed. In mid-2023, she forced a procedural moment to send Biden impeachment articles to committees, keeping immigration policy front and center. By late 2023, she announced she would switch to run in Colorado's 4th District, the safest Republican seat in the state, saying Democrats and Hollywood donors were targeting her old seat. Critics called it carpetbagging. Supporters said it kept a conservative vote in Congress. In 2024, she won in the new district by 54 to 42. Then in 2026, she leaked a photo from Hillary Clinton's closed-door deposition in an oversight matter related to Jeffrey Epstein to a conservative podcaster named Benny Johnson. That violated committee protocols and briefly paused the testimony.
In terms of current tracks, in the 119th Congress, she's on Natural Resources, Vice Chair for Oversight and Investigations, and on the Oversight and Government Reform panels that handle things like cybersecurity and regulatory affairs. In 2025, she authored a measure to bar Pentagon contracts with companies engaged in politically motivated boycotts of Israel, which aligns with a broader Republican push to penalize BDS-style actions and with her stated religiously grounded support for Israel. It's also worth noting her strategy of touting local grants funded by bills she voted against. That dual track shows up a lot with highly polarized members who want to showcase district wins without endorsing the larger packages.
Here's something to get us started on the big question. Is Boebert truly far-right, or just a constitutional conservative, as she says?
I lean toward the far-right label, based on patterns, her alignment with the Freedom Caucus, her support for Trump's stolen election claims, the 1776 moment framing on January 6, the militia-adjacent imagery at that 2019 rally, early positive words about QAnon, a debunked conspiracy theory claiming a secret cabal and a coming storm, then deleting related content later, and the AR-15 as national gun bill. Add votes like opposing medals for some Capitol Police and repeated impeachment pushes that were more messaging than policy. When you put those pieces together, far-right seems like a reasonable descriptive shortcut. Why wouldn't that shoe fit, given the record?
I hear that, and real talk, those are strong data points. But I also see why she rejects the label. When she says constitutional conservative, she's pointing to limited government, gun rights under the Second Amendment, faith in public life, and energy policies that prioritize oil and gas jobs, especially relevant in rural Colorado. From that view, her objections to the 2020 results get framed as process and constitutional concerns, not a rejection of lawful outcomes, even if courts said the claims were baseless. Her social media blocking case being dismissed, her bills signaling support for constituents like energy workers, and her committee focus on oversight, she would argue those are legitimate conservative priorities. So my why is this. Why should a contested media label override how she self-describes and how her district supporters interpret her actions?
Fair question. I think labels are about patterns more than intentions. For instance, embracing church influence in government and pushing 10 Commandments displays in schools, while a sincerely held belief, sits well to the right of traditional church-state separation doctrine. Pair that with backing for strict immigration enforcement and a heavy emphasis on cultural flashpoints. Then factor in campaigning with viral provocations and bending norms like leaking a deposition photo. To me, that constellation isn't just conservative, it's on the far edge of the current right. But I'm with you that labels can be blunt tools. They don't capture nuance like her local grant announcements or casework angles.
And nuance matters. It's possible for someone to hold very conservative views and still operate within constitutional lanes on committees and oversight. It's also true that introducing symbolic bills, like the fentanyl as weapon of mass destruction proposal, which many analysts said wasn't necessary under existing law, can be about signaling to a base rather than policy that passes. In that sense, she resembles other high-visibility figures across the spectrum who use Congress as a platform. So maybe the better question is not which label, but how her strategy plays with voters. In 2022, that nearly cost her the seat. In 2024, in a safer district, it worked. That's a structural story about geography and partisanship as much as ideology.
Yeah, that checks out. One last angle. She often frames oversight fights as correcting executive branch overreach, the deep state narrative in her camp, and she leans hard on free speech and gun rights. If you're a supporter, that looks like guarding liberty. If you're a critic, it looks like stoking distrust and breaking norms. The same actions get read two very different ways. That interpretive split is probably why this label debate never ends.
Topic's pop culture angle is loud. The viral video of her walking around Washington, D.C., holstering a handgun. Shooters grill photos of armed waitstaff. And that quip that alcohol, tobacco, and firearms sounds like a fun weekend in western Colorado. Those moments traveled fast across social platforms and helped build her identity in the same way Beto O'Rourke's skateboarding clips or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Instagram lives built theirs. Different politics, same principle. Attention is political oxygen.
Counterfactual time. What if Scott Tipton had won the 2020 GOP primary? Tipton, for context, was the five-term Republican incumbent in Colorado's 3rd District, more of a conventional establishment Republican. If he had held on, I think the district would have kept a quieter profile with fewer viral flashpoints. You probably don't get the same level of national media coverage or the performative confrontations on the House floor. Committee work from that seat might have looked more transactional: water projects, public lands, energy permitting, less cable news, more appropriations letters.
And ripple effects could have been real. Without Boebert's rise, the Freedom Caucus would have had one less high-visibility messenger during the McCarthy speakership battle in early 2023. Colorado's 3rd might not have been as competitive in 2022. Tipton may have won more comfortably, given incumbent advantages. Shooter's Grill would still be a local story, not a national symbol. And the district switch in 2023 probably never happens, because there's no near loss in 2022 to prompt that strategic move. The national conversation about congressional norms might have sounded a touch different too, with one less lightning rod in the House. Stay curious and keep exploring.
Thanks for tuning in, folks.